So I would pray all the time, and I especially prayed a lot while she was in the hospital that she would get better. And I really had the hopes, and I really thought, that she was gonna come out of this okay. And the moment that she didn't, I was so angry, and I was so angry at God because, I thought that my prayers had worked, and then they ended up not working. She ended up dying, and I couldn't really understand, the way that I understand now. But I was just so angry at God, and I really felt like that anger never ended up going away, and just up until about actually just like about 2 or 3 years ago. The pain eventually goes away, but the anger, I really feel like it stayed there, and it kind of like it grew deep into my heart, into the person that I am, and just became who I was. I moved over here to the United States, to Hialeah actually, when I was 7 years old. I came from Cuba in an airplane. A lot of people try to mess with me, say I came on a boat, but nah, I came in an airplane. I came the legal way. So I pretty much, lived a normal life all throughout elementary, and all about, pretty much through all of middle school, also up until eighth grade when I was 14 years old. By this point, I was already, I had a brother, and I had a sister, right? My little sister was about 6 years old, and my little brother was about 2 years old at this point in time. But I do want to say, I moved over here with my mom and my dad, which is technically he's my stepdad, but to me he's my dad because he raised me, and he took me in as his own from the moment that I was 3 years old when he got with my mom, right? I remember me every single time, my parents didn't know English. My mom definitely didn't know English, and I would help her. I would basically be like the middleman or the translator for her, for my mom, every single time that she needed me to speak to somebody, or that she needed anybody to speak to her. She would always usually take me to doctor's appointments that she might have, with her. She would take me with her so that I can translate what the doctor would be saying to her, and vice versa. So I remember one day, I think it was a Saturday. It was the day after school. I went into the doctor's office with her, and this is for the eye doctor. So my mom would wear glasses, and she actually was blind on. She was starting to go blind on, I guess you can say, on her peripheral vision on her right eye. So she was nearsighted on one eye, so she couldn't really see. She would see straight, but she couldn't really like see just next to her on her right eye, right? And I remember we went to the doctor's office one day because it was growing worse and worse over the years and over the months, and she went to the eye doctor. I went with her, and my dad was working that day, and we were there. They did some exams on her. We were there for like about 2 hours, a bunch of tests on her, some scanning her head as well to see what was the real issue behind that, behind what was going on. And I remember the day, that doctor that day, he ended up coming in with the results, right? And he had to tell me the results so that I can go ahead and tell my mom. And what the doctor told me was that the reason why my mom was starting to go blind from this right eye was because she had a tumor, that was pretty much. He says that he believed that it was growing. I had been growing already since she was young until now, and it got so big that it was already pressing to the back of her eye, and it was making her go blind, right? And I remember telling her that, and well, by that point, I was kind of crying. I was trying to keep it together, but I was crying. She saw me crying, and she basically started crying too. After I told her everything that happened, and that day was just a huge mess. Just because the last thing that I expected was the doctor to tell me, that my mom had a tumor in the back of her eye. The tumor wasn't cancerous, but nonetheless, it was still, going so big that she did have the possibility that she was going to go blind from that eye, but it wasn't a life-threatening tumor. So, fast forward a couple months, my mom ends up going into surgery, and she ends up going into surgery in probably the worst hospital in all of Miami, and that's Palmetto Hospital. So don't ever go there, just FYI. She ended up going there, and she was in going. They prepped her for like about 2 days, if I'm not mistaken, and throughout it was a process of about maybe a week, right, in total, from the prepping to the surgery and post surgery. And the whole time I was with my little brother and my little sister. I wasn't even going to school. I stayed home taking care of my brother, because taking care of my brother and my sister, because there was nobody else that could. My dad had to be in the hospital with my mom, and we had to do what we had to do, and I stayed with my brother and sister. And I remember she had to go into open brain surgery to remove that tumor. Well, that's what the doctor wanted to do. He wanted to go into open brain surgery. They ended up going with the process, right? They ended up going into the surgery. Everything seemed fine after the surgery until that very next day after, when my mom had a stroke, right? And she had a stroke and she was not able to speak or to see or anything from from the right half of her body on out. So she wasn't able to do anything from that part of her body. And the reason why the doctor wanted to do that open brain surgery, I don't know, because there was actually other ways that the doctor could have gone about, removing that tumor or getting it to shrink, like, like laser surgery or even radiation treatment, which would have been less invasive than open head surgery, because the tumor was right behind the eye and it's not an easy spot to get to. It's almost like if it's inside the brain right behind her right eye. So it wasn't an easy spot to get into, with a knife. So he basically chose the worst out of all the options that he had. He chose the most invasive one, which was the brain surgery. She ended up going into brain surgery. She had the stroke, and then right there and that day, I went into hospital and I visited her, and I couldn't really, I was pretty much just, I can't remember throughout all of this period in time. There's not many things that I can remember, and it's probably because the experience was so traumatic. I'm guessing because of the pain. There's a lot of that I can't remember. But what I do know is that I was trying to speak to her, and her not being barely able to talk because of her stroke, and as she was recovering, I remember that she saw me. She was conscious, and I was there, trying to talk to her. The last thing that I did was, I remember just giving her a kiss in the arm and just having to walk away, just because I just couldn't be in there, for too long, and I had to go back and take care of my brother and sister at the house. So the next day, my mom ends up having a second stroke, and this second stroke ends up just leaving her without any brain activity, so she was brain dead, right? And I remember that same day, that second day, my dad comes home, and it was my dad, it was my uncle, and my grandpa. All three of them were in the hospital, and all three of them were the ones that were there with my mom while I was with my brother and sister. So they all come home, and my brother and my sister were being distracted by my grandpa and my uncle. And my dad comes straight to me, and he takes me to the room. As soon as he closes that door, he just starts bawling. Mind you, I'd never seen this man cry before, and I did right then and there. And he just started bawling like I've never ever seen him do before. And he immediately hugs me. He tells me in Spanish that that she left us. But as soon as my dad started crying, I immediately knew what was going on. And he didn't even have to tell me. I started crying immediately, and it was just one of the, or if not the worst pain that I have experienced so far in my life. And it was a very dark time in my life, being 14. It was like that awkward stage between middle school and high school, and there was a lot, going on. And yeah, I was basically just in so much pain, and pain usually goes away over time. But I remember that after that same day when my dad told me everything, he broke the news to me, I was just crying, and I was crying and crying for days. But from that very first day, that he told me, I just remember being in so much anger, and I was so angry because, while I was taking care of my brother and sister, each and every single day I was praying, and I was praying. I was raised Catholic because of my mom, but we still pray to God, and I didn't really know God as per se, the way that I know God now, who He really is, and I never even read the Bible, but I did know about praying. So I would pray all the time, and I especially prayed a lot while she was in the hospital, that she would get better. And I really had the hopes, and I really thought, that she was going to come out of this okay. And the moment that she didn't, I was so angry, and I was so angry at God because, I thought that my prayers had worked, and they ended up not working. She ended up dying, and I couldn't really understand, the way that I understand now, but I was just so angry at God. And I really felt like that anger never ended up going away, and just up until about 2 or 3 years ago. The pain eventually goes away, but the anger, I really feel like it stayed there, and it kind of like it grew deep into my heart, into the person that I am, and just became who I was. And that anger slowly consumed me, and I pretty much grew up with anger issues throughout my life. And I really do feel like that was a result of that day right then and there, when my dad told me everything, and I just became angry at God, right? I just remember just being so angry at God, and I had a lot of resentment towards him. After that, I completely stopped praying. I completely just stopped talking to God. I just ended up just living my life pretty much. I remember in middle school ended right. I ended up finishing eighth grade, and right about the point that I was starting ninth grade, I was actually ninth grade, almost going into 10th grade. Um, my dad had lost his job as a result of everything that had happened with my mom. He lost his job, and now it was me, my brother, my sister, and just him. And just a couple months passed by after that, and my dad, we lose the apartment that we're staying in, so now we have nowhere to go. So we couldn't really stay with anybody. It was just basically I thought that we were gonna just ended up being in the street, in the streets, right? And my dad rent a little motel. It's like some very very cheapy motel in Calle Ocho, all the way in Miami. And we ended up staying there, and through that process, we were there like about a month and a half. And after that, we ended up staying in a shelter, right? And that shelter, it wasn't the easiest time ever, because just the people that you were with, the food that you were eating wasn't the best, and it was basically a room about half, not even half of the size of this room. It was a room big enough to fit two twin size bunk beds right next to each other, and space to open the door, and that's it. And that's pretty much all the space that we all had to fit into with all of our stuff. And we were there like about a year, but looking back now, I'm so thankful that we even had that, because you can see people that are living in the streets and they don't even have anything over their heads. They barely even have food. So we at least, we might have gone through not the easiest time, but we also, had it a lot better than a lot of people did. And I know God, even me, me being as, angry at him, I know that he found still favor in me, and he still took care of me, just because, he had a plan for me. And he knew that this right here right now I was gonna end up talking about all that happened. So I know now that God back then had my back, but I didn't know it right then and there, right? We stayed in that shelter for like about a year. We ended up moving out. We ended up moving into a little apartment, which is for people that have needs, and or financial needs. And we ended up be qualifying into that, and we moved somewhere. It was like a little apartment in Miami Gardens. And I actually ended up, funny coincidence, I actually ended up living right next to, like a block away from Josie, basically. And we didn't even know each other at this point in time, but it was funny that we lived there. We lived so close to each other, yet we didn't know each other, and we didn't know that we were gonna end up being together. I look back at myself, and I was just this angry person, angry at God, and just a lot of bitterness inside of me, a lot of hurt inside of me. There was a lot of anxiety that I was dealing with. There was a lot of fears that I was dealing with. There was a lot of worries, and just all of these emotions bottled up. And most of them were a result of just things that I had experienced through in my past. And eventually, started bottling up to a point where it's just I couldn't hold too much in anymore. And at that point, and that's the point from like 10th grade all the way until like a year after high school, I didn't know God. And I fast forward to now, and I look at myself now, and I'm this person who loves God. And so then how did I go? How did I go from hating God to loving God? And well, the answer to that was, started in June of 2015, which was the moment that Josie and I became boyfriend and girlfriend. She was my girlfriend then, but my wife now. But the moment we started going out, we started. She introduced me to church. She took me to church. I was open about it. By that point, I was over all the pain. But now I was just dealing with the person I became, which was that angry person. And little by little, I went into church, and I started learning about God. I started reading about God. I started falling in love with the Word of God. And the moment that I started falling in love with the Word of God, the more and more, that anger that was inside of me started leaving. Little by little, it started just basically, it's like God has started unrooting it out. Even in the deepest parts, there's no place too deep inside of your heart that God cannot reach. So I really do feel like he's just been digging all of that anger out. And he's been, he dug it to the point where he just took that out of me completely. And I am now a completely different person who I am now than who I was, back then when I would hate God. And then also throughout going out through high school, I would have a lot of friends, in high school, and I'm pretty sure that they would not, like, if they would, you've also taught them, I'm definitely not the same person that I was even in high school to even now. It's just been a growing experience, and it's something that I'm still learning. I'm still growing, I'm still evolving, and I'm still changing, and I'm changing, and I'm doing all of this, for the glory of God and for Him alone. Just because, He's taken me from a place of hurt, from a place of just complacency, we're a place of laziness. He's taken me from a place of anger, of all of these crazy emotions and all of these crazy, things that I was dealing with, to putting me where I am now. And he's still not done. It's a growing process, and I really can't wait, just to see how far, God's gonna take me, because I can look back and I can see the big difference. So I want to be able to look back a couple years from now, or even a year from now, and look back to now, this very moment, and see, just what God has done. We always got to be constantly changing and growing and renewing our mind and our hearts before God. Once we let God just change us from the inside out, then you see how everything starts to change. You see how everything around you starts to change, because you start to change, because you are starting now to just react differently to things that you would have reacted way different before. You start to see things in a new way. You start to just act, just start becoming a whole entirely new person. And this person is not you get me, but this person is now God through you. It is not you on your own strength, but it is now God in His strength doing it through you. And that's the beauty of it, that even when we think that, we are at our lowest, when we think that we are doing, like the right or the wrong thing, you get me, God always manages to just beat all of those expectations that you might have had for yourself, and He sets the bar higher, and He goes ahead, and He takes you to somewhere way far beyond your reach, way far beyond what you thought that you could have ever done in your life by yourself. If you let God do that for you, I can say that I can say that I went from somebody who had resentment towards God, to now basically being on fire for God and loving God more than anything and anybody in this world. We all go through things. None of us are perfect in no shape, form, or way, because if we were perfect, then we would be God, and if we're God, then then there's no point to any of this. You get me? God Himself is the only one who is perfect. Jesus, when He walked on this earth, He was the only perfect one. Yet He gave everything up. He gave everything up for us, because us and our mistakes and everything that we have dealt with, the pains, the suffering, just the mistakes, everything that we have dealt with, He took that upon Himself, and He dealt with that. He destroyed that in the cross at Calvary that day, 2019 years ago. He did that for us, and He did that for us so that we can go ahead and be blameless. Because when God looks at us, He doesn't see the mistakes. He doesn't see, how angry I was at Him. He doesn't see anything, anything bad. He sees us blameless. He sees us in our white clothing, perfect, just that perfectness, that we could have never achieved in ourselves. And the reason why He sees that is because Jesus died, and He took away all that dirtiness. He took away all those mistakes. He took away all those fears, all those worries. He took all of that. So once you give your life to Christ, you get me, once you start reading in the Word of God, Jesus, and you accept God into your life, and that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, you'll realize that He Himself took that out of you. The reason why Jesus died on the cross was so He can take all that dirtiness, all that blame out of you, so that when God looks at you, He looks at you in perfectness. He sees that you are perfect, and you are perfect alone. This is pretty much the end of this video. My testimony is still not done. That's the beauty of it, that every single day, we go through things, and at one point in time, it becomes a testimony, and it becomes another reason why we can glorify, and why we can give the thanks to God, and why we can give all the glory to Him. Just because everything that, has happened in my life so far, all the glory goes to God and to God alone. So, really, that being said, I just want to thank you guys, for watching this video. And again, I really do hope you enjoyed it. I really do hope that this video spoke to somebody.